Before you get defensive, before you rush to judge, understand this. Human behavior always speaks, especially when words are controlled. People think intimacy is a private act with no residue, that what happens in the dark stays in the dark. But psychology doesn't work like that. Energy doesn't reset overnight. The body remembers, the mind leaks, and emotions leave fingerprints everywhere. This is not about morality. This is not about shaming women or glorifying suspicion. This is about awareness. Because when someone crosses an emotional or physical line, especially in secrecy, they don't come back the same person they left as. Something shifts. Something recalibrates, and whether they want to or not, that shift shows up in tone, in presence, in behavior. Most people miss it because they're either too afraid to see or too busy gaslighting their own intuition. But patterns don't lie, they repeat. And if you understand human psychology, you stop asking, am I overthinking, and start asking, why does this feel different? What I'm about to explain is not proof, it's not accusation, it's insight. And insight is dangerous because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say will make some people uncomfortable. Not because it's vulgar, not because it's graphic, but because it exposes how humans behave when desire, secrecy, guilt, and validation collide. This is not about shaming. This is not about policing anyone's body. This is about patterns, psychology, energy, and the quiet shifts people don't realize they broadcast when their internal world changes overnight. We live in a time where people think actions leave no trace, that intimacy can be compartmentalized, that you can touch someone, exchange vulnerability, cross an emotional or physical line, and then return unchanged. That is a lie. Human beings are not machines. The nervous system records everything, especially what happens in private. When someone has just crossed a boundary, especially one that involves secrecy, their behavior doesn't scream. It whispers. And if you know what to listen for, you'll hear it. The first sign is a sudden emotional contrast, either unusually soft or unusually sharp. There's rarely a middle ground. Some people return unusually affectionate, lighter, calmer, almost relieved. Others come back irritable, defensive, short-tempered. Both reactions come from the same place: emotional discharge. Intimacy releases tension. Guilt creates it. The swing tells you something internal has shifted. The second sign is altered eye contact, not less eye contact, different eye contact. Either too much, as if trying to prove innocence, or too little, as if avoiding being seen too clearly. Eye contact is regulated by the subconscious. When someone is hiding something, their eyes don't behave naturally. They overcorrect. The third sign is a sudden change in self-perception. Watch how she talks about herself. A woman who has just been validated sexually, especially in a secretive context, often shows a subtle boost in confidence that doesn't match her circumstances. She may carry herself differently, speak more boldly, dress with slightly more intention. This isn't about clothes, it's about posture, presence, energy. Validation does that. The fourth sign is over-explaining or under-explaining. If she starts narrating her day in unnecessary detail, that's anxiety talking. The mind believes that more words create more credibility. On the flip side, sudden vagueness, where clarity once existed, is also revealing. I was just out. Nothing much. When specifics disappear, something is being protected. The fifth sign is a shift in boundaries that feels illogical. Either she becomes unusually distant physically or oddly relaxed about closeness without emotional depth. When intimacy has just happened elsewhere, the body recalibrates. Touch can feel overstimulating or meaningless. Both are signs of emotional displacement. The sixth sign is subtle guilt management behavior. This is where morality gets misunderstood. Guilt doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like kindness, extra favors, sudden patience, or even generosity. The psyche tries to balance the internal scale. If I'm good here, maybe I'm not bad there. That's not manipulation, it's self soothing. The seventh sign is increased phone sensitivity, not just hiding the phone, but reacting emotionally to notifications. A micro smile, a sudden silence, turning the screen face down when that was never a habit before. The phone becomes a container of memory, and memory carries charge. The eighth sign is a change in how conflict is handled. Either she avoids it completely because she doesn't want emotional exposure, or she provokes it unconsciously as a way to create distance or justify internal conflict. When someone feels internally divided, they either numb connection or sabotage it. Now, listen to this part carefully, because this is where most people get it wrong. None of these signs prove anything on their own. Behavior is not evidence, it's information. And information must be interpreted with emotional intelligence, not paranoia. The danger is not noticing change. The danger is assuming instead of communicating. People don't change after intimacy because intimacy is wrong. They change because intimacy is powerful. It rewires attachment. It stirs identity. It awakens needs people didn't know how to voice. And here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to hear. Secrecy is rarely about sex. It's about feeling seen without consequence, desired without responsibility, chosen without commitment. So if you're watching for signs, ask yourself why. Not to accuse, but to understand. Because the goal isn't to catch someone, the goal is to stop living in emotional denial. Patterns don't lie, but neither do unspoken needs. And the strongest people don't obsess over signs. They create relationships where secrets have no oxygen to survive. There's another layer people miss. The body remembers before the mind admits. You'll notice changes in sleep patterns, appetite, or restlessness, not dramatically, subtly. The nervous system stays alert after an intense, intimate experience, especially when it's hidden. The body doesn't know how to pretend. It either seeks calm or stimulation. You may also notice a shift in language. Certain words disappear, certain phrases repeat. When someone is managing an internal secret, their vocabulary tightens. They avoid emotional words or they intellectualize feelings. This isn't manipulation, it's containment. The mind tries to keep emotion from spilling. Then there's the way she listens. A woman who is fully present listens with her whole body. When presence fractures, listening becomes selective. She hears what's safe, misses what's exposing, not because she doesn't care, but because care now carries risk. Another overlooked sign is comparison, subtle, indirect, often unconscious. She may reference people, men, or relationships in abstract ways that weren't there before. This isn't about bragging. It's the mind recalibrating standards, testing narratives, trying to make sense of contrast. Watch how accountability changes. Either she becomes hyper-responsible, quick to apologize, eager to smooth things over, or oddly resistant to responsibility altogether. Guilt either softens the ego or hardens it. Both are defenses. There's also a shift in humor. Laughter can become louder, more frequent, almost performative, or it can vanish entirely. Humor is a pressure valve. When internal pressure rises, humor compensates or collapses. And then there's silence, not absence of words, absence of emotional transparency. Conversations feel flatter, less layered, less curious. When someone has just shared depth elsewhere, they often don't have the capacity to go deep again immediately. Emotional energy gets rationed. Here's something important. None of this makes someone bad. Humans are complex. Desire doesn't follow rules, but responsibility does. Emotional maturity does. Integrity does. The real question isn't, what did she do? The real question is, what need was met there that wasn't being met here? Because behavior is always the symptom, never the disease. And if you're the one observing these changes, understand this. Hypervigilance will destroy connection faster than betrayal ever could. Awareness must be paired with grounded communication, not interrogation. People reveal themselves not through one action, but through consistency over time. One night doesn't define a person, but patterns do. And the truth always leaks, not because people are careless, but because authenticity is heavier than secrets. What matters most is not detecting signs. It's creating safety so signs don't have to exist at all. There's also the way memory behaves after an intimate secret. You might notice selective recall. She remembers irrelevant details vividly, but glosses over moments that require emotional continuity. That's not forgetfulness. That's the brain protecting a timeline that doesn't align anymore. When events don't fit the story someone is living, memory edits itself. Another subtle indicator is a shift in future-oriented language. Plans become conditional. Maybe, we'll see, let's not decide yet. When someone feels emotionally divided, commitment language feels heavy. Even short-term certainty can trigger internal conflict, so the future gets blurred on purpose. Pay attention to how reassurance is handled. Either she seeks it excessively, fishing for validation, checking if she's still wanted, or she rejects it altogether, acting indifferent when reassurance is offered. Both come from the same root, uncertainty about where she stands emotionally. You may also notice changes in routines, not dramatic ones, micro changes, different times, different habits, a new rhythm. Humans anchor identity in routine. When intimacy happens outside the usual structure, routines quietly rearrange to accommodate the psychological shift. Then there's the way she reacts to intimacy being discussed in general, not about her, not about anyone specific, just the topic. A woman who has just crossed an intimate line may deflect, joke, intellectualize, or change the subject entirely. It's not fear of exposure, it's emotional overload. Another overlooked sign is emotional generosity followed by withdrawal. She may give deeply in one moment, attention, care, warmth, and then disappear emotionally the next. This push-pull isn't strategy, it's regulation, the system trying to find balance after an internal disruption. Watch how vulnerability changes. Either she becomes unusually open very quickly, sharing things she never shared before, or she shuts vulnerability down completely. Intimacy can crack defenses or reinforce them. Both responses signal a recent emotional impact. And then there's intuition, not suspicion, not insecurity. Intuition is calm. It doesn't panic. It doesn't accuse. It simply notices. If something feels off without clear reason, that feeling usually comes from pattern recognition, not imagination. But here's the part people avoid acknowledging. Noticing signs without self-awareness turns into control. And control is fear dressed up as certainty. If you're scanning for signs constantly, ask yourself what you're afraid to face directly. Because emotionally mature connection doesn't rely on detection. It relies on honesty, boundaries, and alignment. When those are present, secrets feel unnecessary. When they're missing, no amount of observation will create safety. People don't hide because they're evil. They hide because they don't know how to ask for what they need without risking loss. And until that changes, signs will keep appearing quietly, consistently, unmistakably. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. The goal is not to become a detective in your own relationship. The goal is to become so grounded, so self-aware that you don't ignore shifts, but you also don't lose yourself to them. Signs are not there to create fear. They are there to invite truth. Real power is not in catching someone. Real power is in knowing what you will tolerate, what you will confront, and what you will walk away from without begging for clarity. Because when someone is aligned with you emotionally, mentally, and morally, you don't need signs. You feel stability, you feel consistency, you feel peace. And if that piece is missing, the problem is never just what happened one night. The problem is what wasn't happening for a long time before it. Choose relationships where honesty feels safer than secrecy, where intimacy doesn't create confusion, where desire doesn't require disappearance. Because the strongest connections are not built on watching behavior. They're built on shared values, clear boundaries, and the courage to tell the truth before silence does it for you.